Decolonization. Can Israel really be called a colonialist power? One of the enduring myths of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is the myth of Israel stealing the land of Palestine. The argument is made that since Israel's history in the region derives from the Bible, and the Bible is an ahistorical source, Israel never existed in Palestine. This is a patent falsification of history, as any person who has read texts from the ancient world knows. What is colonization or decolonization? Decolonization is one of the most putrid claims made in justifying the October 7th attacks. The concept of colonization derives from the history of empires. Typically, an empire takes over the land of a weaker civilization and imports its citizens into that land. These are the colonies of the empire. Now, the 19th century was a period of intense colonization of Africa and South America by European powers, who established colonies throughout these regions. These colonies gradually gained their independence in the second part of the 20th century, and there are very few colonies today. The claim that the Jews are colonizers in Palestine is a simple falsification of history. Jews are an indigenous people who have lived in Palestine since not later than 1209 BCE, more than 3,000 years ago. Ignorant or lying publicists claim that since the evidence for this early Jewish settlement in Palestine derives from religious texts such as the Hebrew Bible, Jews never lived in Palestine. Let's accept, for the sake of argument, that the Bible and all other religious texts are irrelevant to this discussion. Nevertheless, it's completely irrefutable that by 1209 BCE, a group of people who spoke a Semitic language and called themselves Israel were resident in the territory then known to the Egyptians as Retenu or Canaan. The evidence comes from a stele established by an Egyptian pharaoh named Mer-Neftach, who claims to have destroyed this group. The stele is on display in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. Its reading is not disputed by any reputable Egyptologist. Israel continued to flourish in the land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean, despite the claims of Mer-Neftach. By 850 BCE, a king of a territory on the east side of the Dead Sea, whose name was Mesha, wrote a different stele. In it, he complains of Israel crossing the Jordan and taking cities which belonged to him in the area east of the Dead Sea, south of the Wadi Mujib. This stele is currently in the Louvre in Paris, and the name Israel, as well as the name of Israel's king, Omri, are irrefutably readable in the text, which is written in the Moabite dialect. Let's proceed. By 853 BCE, the kings of Assyria, which was the first world empire centered in what is now Iraq, had begun to invade the territory west of the Euphrates. This put them into conflict and contact with the kings of Israel, several of whom they mention by name. The Assyrian royal inscriptions are very well documented. They are available in translations from the ancient Akkadian into English, German, French, Hebrew, all well understood and very clearly readable. A partial list of Assyrian kings who mention Israel in their inscriptions includes Shalmaneser III, who mentions Ahab, the king of Israel, Tiglath-Pileser III, who mentions Menachem, Pekach, and Hoshea, kings of Israel, and Ahaz, the king of Judah. Sargon II and his son Sennacherib mention Hezekiah, the king of Judah. Esarhaddon mentions Manasseh, the king of Judah. A short Google search of the online inscriptions will locate most of the references, and the remaining ones are available in many, many academic books, including William Halo's monumental Context of Scripture. The summary above brings us to the middle of the 7th century BCE. Further mentions of Jews and Judah in historical texts related to the territory between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean cannot be seriously disputed. The Babylonians recorded the exile of the kingdom of Judah in many texts which have come down to us and are well understood. And archaeological excavations have found many mentions of the province known as Yehud, which is Judah in Hebrew, from the Persian period, from 538 BCE until 333 BCE. Of course, in 333 BCE, we begin the Hellenistic period, when Palestine came under Greek control. The quantity of texts mentioning the Jews as inhabiting the land under the Greeks and under the Romans would fill several volumes, and I'll omit their discussion here. After the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 BCE, Jews continued to inhabit the land, and there was an ongoing Jewish settlement in different parts of Palestine all the way through the Middle Ages. In the beginning of the modern period, in the 18th century, Jews began to return in large numbers, some from Europe and many from other areas of the Middle East. Larger numbers began to return in the 19th century, again, beginning with Jews from Yemen and continuing with Jews from Europe. The largest number of Jews who entered Palestine in the 20th century came from the Arab states from which they were expelled after the creation of Israel in 1948. The claim that Jews are colonizers is bizarre.